out tonight and joining us for our discussion, training, whatever you want to call it. As we get started, just introduction for anybody that I'm pretty sure everybody knows who I am, but David Condry, I am the project coordinator for the Above the Influence Coalition. Anybody that's interested, before you leave, if you haven't signed up, please do. If you want more information about the coalition, if you're not on our mailing list or anything like that, mark that so we can get you on our email list to get information about what's going on. Also, there's some information back there. Most everybody, I think, has seen this stuff on us, especially our Text to Protect and stuff like that. But I wanted to point out there is the Benton County Service Directory that has been put together by DCAT. So these are back there. So please, if you don't have one of these yet, take some. Take as many as you want. And give them out so people are aware of the services that are available in our county. So with that, I'm going to get out of the way, hand it over to Mr. Kurt Wheeler from Asac, and let him take us wherever he plans to take us. So there you go.
That's it. I expect you to do like 10, 15 minutes at least.
Well, but I had to do the news. So there you go.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm going to run you through a variety of trends. Before I do, I just kind of keep in mind that these are ever changing. I mean, I think when I did something lying with you guys, what was that, 2-3 years ago? Some of it's still there, but then it's progressed beyond. So it's ever changing. I would encourage you to stay plugged in. However you can, stay plugged in to what's happening, especially if you have kids or if you're in the education system. Really important to continue to follow some of these trends. I also would encourage you to really be careful where you're getting your information. There's a lot of sites online. Not all of them have valid, good, research-backed information. So I'd encourage you to really think about that. When you do go online, think about, what am I looking at here? What's their motivation? For instance, if it's a pro-marijuana website, their motivation is marijuana legalization. So any information you get, it's going to be geared to that. So just kind of consider that. I always like to start with this, and I like to put it in a perspective of how does all this happen? Because it just doesn't happen overnight, right? We don't just wake up one day and say, oh geez, we have a synthetic drug problem, okay? It's been building. Stuff's been going on for years. And I look at it in terms of, if you had a tree and you initially planted that tree, what really determines how well that tree grows or that plant is the soil, right? How many nutrients are in the soil, what's going on with it, moisture, everything, okay? And then that tree's going to blossom and grow and get big. And unfortunately, when we see things up in the top of the tree, normally it's stuff that hits the median. Normally it's stuff, a story, maybe there's been an increase in drunk driving accidents, maybe there's been an increase in people going to the hospital for heroin overdoses. For one reason or another, it's hit the media, and that draws our attention. We're like, whoa, what's going on here? We got a real problem. But honestly, it started years before. It started in the soil. It started with what we allow to be sold in our community. It started with what kinds of stuff is going on in the schools. It started with what kinds of values are being taught at home by parents. It started with all this. And two of the pieces that really seem to drive youth use more than anything, use in general, but especially with youth, perception of harm and access. And if you haven't heard those terms, consider them as we go through the trends. Consider access. How easy is it for people, especially kids, to get their hands on stuff? If it's easy, then use generally goes up. Okay, for instance, prescription drugs. They're in the homes. They can get their hands on them pretty easily. Okay, when you follow surveys, alcohol, tobacco being reported as easily gotten. When synthetic drugs are being sold openly in the stores in Cedar Rapids, use jump. So when that access increases, so does use. Perception of harm. When kids think it's not a big deal, when they think it's not going to hurt me, it's fine, why are you making a big deal out of it? That's that lowered perception of harm. And when that happens, use increases. Probably the most popular one right now is marijuana, right? I mean, you talk to kids and they're all like, what's the big deal? It's medicine. It's being legalized. It's not as bad as alcohol. It's not as bad as tobacco. I mean, this is the perception of harm dropping. So as a result, use goes up. And when those two things happen together, that makes for a real nasty kind of picture. Okay? So consider those things as we go through, and think about access and perception of harm in your communities and how that plays out. So some of the trends I'm going to talk about, obviously I will talk about alcohol and tobacco. They're still around. We'll talk about some of the trends connected to them. Electronic smoking devices is a very big one, so we're really going to talk about that. Marijuana and some of the trends, and I'm not going to really focus on just smoking marijuana. We're going to really look at what are some of the other ways, other things that are going on with marijuana. And then of course we'll finish out with medications, synthetic drugs, heroin, and meth. Okay? As we go through, please ask questions. The biggest thing I hope is that this is useful. So I want you guys to be able to walk out with as many questions answered as possible. Hopefully you guys will stump me and I'm going to have to give an I don't know. That means that we're really starting to get into the real meat of it. All right, so let's start with alcohol, because that's pretty easy, right? It's been around for years, been part of our culture for years. In Iowa especially, you know, Midwest, you had the stories about University of Iowa and the party school, and I think they went from 4 to 3, and then I think they jumped up to 1, and I think, did they drop back down to 3, I think, or 2? So, you know, it's been around, and it's not going to go anyplace, quite honestly. But there are some things we want to watch for, and one of them was the Four Loko. If you didn't follow that, years back, they used to mix the stimulants and alcohol together. Really not a good thing, but they did it. They mixed them together. They had a number of problems with that, because you're putting stimulants and you're putting a depressant and stimulant in the body. It's not going to play nice. Okay? So now they're not supposed to be mixing those into a drink, but that hasn't stopped the trend. It's just changed the trend, and we'll talk about that. We have a number of different flavored liquors that are out there now. We have what they call Alco Pops that are out there now, where honestly you can't tell the difference. Is it a soda pop or is it alcohol? Same thing is true with these guys now. Go into a store and I challenge you to pick out an alcohol drink and an energy drink and look at them. It's very hard to tell them apart anymore. Okay? There are some things you can do. You can pay attention to. The alcoholic drink is always going to highlight their percentage of alcohol. That's going to be highlighted on there big and bold. So I pay attention to that. If you see that, obviously you got an alcoholic drink. The other thing that exists is with the energy drinks, they are generally going to put that little nutritional thing on there. You're not going to find that on the alcohol drinks. So there's 2 real quick ways you can use to identify those. Powdered alcohol. I don't know if you followed this. It was approved by the FDA, which is, you know, kind of scary, because now you're talking about a situation where a kid can have a bottle of water and about a 4 by 6 inch package of powdered alcohol, put the 2 together and they got an alcoholic beverage. Okay? Or you can mix that powdered alcohol into other things. Lots of uses for this that would be really challenging for a school to have to deal with. Okay? How do you handle that kind of thing? I don't know if this is going to be sold in Iowa. I doubt it. It doesn't sound like they're going to weigh in on that. So unless they find other alternative ways of getting the powdered alcohol, hopefully you won't have to see that. Okay? But again, that's just one way trying to reach out, branch out, provide another product. As far as energy drinks, we have had some issues with the powdered caffeine. So them getting that, and if you haven't followed it, pretty easy to get online. Okay, order powdered caffeine and then mix it with whatever drink you want. Or go get an energy drink and then mix your liquor and your energy drink together, going back to the Four Loko type thing. Okay, again, putting stimulants and depressants, and they don't play nice. We'll talk a little bit about medications, but some of the parties, you may find a concoction of energy drinks and liquor mixed together, and then you might also have pills that are being swallowed with it. So all these things going into a body, and who knows how they're going to play when they get inside the body. And we'll talk more about that and what that looks like. There's been a number of alternative trends. I'm not sure how popular they are. I mean, there have been cases where the tampons are being soaked, and then of course they'll, how do I put this? Insert it into an orifice of some type, and the alcohol is absorbed into the body instead of them drinking it, okay? So that is one. And then we'll talk about another trend that's going on alcohol related in connection to electronic smoking devices. Oh, Necnominate. I'm sorry, I do want to mention that one. If you're ever curious, go online, Google Necnominate. And what you'll have is you'll have a number of things, and it started over in Europe as kind of an innocent I dare you to strip down to your undergarments and run through Walmart type thing. And it's really started to boil over into I dare you to pound a bottle of 151, or you know, some kid doing a handstand on a toilet and drinking alcohol out of a toilet. Or somebody taking a whole bottle and dumping it in a bong and then drinking the whole thing. Okay, these are the kinds of things you find on Necnominate. So it's kind of like the ice bucket challenge. I did this, now you're up. What can you do to top it, so to speak? Questions on alcohol? Okay. And by the way, alcohol, one of the other things to watch, if you're a parent and you keep it at home, kind of have an idea what's in your bottle. I mean, I think everybody would miss if you had a bottle of liquor and all of a sudden it's gone, you'd probably miss that. But you might not miss if they're pouring some out of the bottle and then putting the bottle back. Or if they're pouring some out of the bottle and then putting water in there and then putting the bottle back. You might not notice that until the first time you go to get a drink and it's watered down. But that is something that's happening when they do get liquor from the homes. Tobacco and nicotine, if you haven't followed it, it's been really going through a violent, dramatic shift. This started probably back in 2008 and has continued to shift, and new products coming out. You've had the snus, which started off, and then you've had dissolvable tobacco, and you've had energy snuff. There's been nicotine water and powders and all kinds of stuff, hand gels. They've just all this stuff that's coming out. And none of it was really catching on. Okay, they've been losing a lot of tobacco users trying to make up the money. None of it was catching on. As a matter of fact, these guys aren't even made anymore. They are trying to sell the licensing rights. So whatever's out there online, last I saw, they were going for about $1 a pack. But they're just selling off whatever's out there. They're not even making anymore. But what has caught on is the e-cigarettes, the electronic smoking devices. And that would be one trend I really would encourage you all to keep a close eye on. It's something that I started to follow about 2-3 years ago especially, and it's something that I was really concerned about even back then. Initially, we didn't have a law. We now have an Iowa law, and I get calls from school administrators, and they'll say, you know, what's the deal with these e-cigarettes, Kurt? And I'll say, well, they're illegal by federal law. If they're under 18, they shouldn't have them. They shouldn't be able to buy them. They shouldn't be able to use them. They're illegal. A lot of people don't know that, okay? They are illegal. They should not have them. As well as any of the e-juices that go in them. Those are illegal as well for them to have. So we have that. That's a good thing. And if you're in Linn County has a law as well. And that even will address where the products are placed, because that's an aggressive marketing tool by the tobacco industry. They'll place them on a counter or someplace right in the face of youth to try and kind of spark their interest, so to speak. So again, that's something to keep a close eye on. And by the way, the tobacco companies have bought up a large majority of the e-cigarette companies. If you haven't been following it, even Blue e-cigarette, I believe, was bought up by R.J. Reynolds. And Blue was a pretty big e-cigarette. It was bought up. So it's something that they see an opportunity to really work with and find that new market of customers. If you follow the use rates, you basically have about a doubling thing going on every year. Okay, so starting back in 2011, we got under 2%. 2012, we're hitting almost 3%. And 2013, we're about 4.5%. As of 2014, our use survey reflected 10% use in Iowa. 15% is being reported nationwide. So if you think about that, how fast that's going, I mean, it's basically going like this. And that's youth we're talking about. We're not even talking adults. That's youth, okay? That's alarming, because again, these things are illegal for them to buy in Iowa, but they get their hands on them. They are being seen in schools. I can't tell you how many administrators have contacted me and said, what do we do with this? Okay, well, first of all, your school policy addresses it, that's good. State law addresses it, that's good. Now let's get the parents involved, okay? So again, that's all part of the process. If you don't know what they look like, it's kind of what they look like. You can go into convenience stores, you can see them. Most of them are going to be positioned on the counter, at least in a clear case where they can be visible. They were initially called e-cigarettes, but then you have these guys come out, and now you have terms like shisha pen, e-hookah, hookah pen, you have vape pen, they'll be called vaporizers, they have e-cig, e-cigar, on and on and on, all these names, okay? Pretty much the same technology. Most of them have nicotine in them. There are some variations. Some other examples would be like these guys. You have celebrity endorsed ESDs, electronic smoking devices. It's okay if I use ESDs from now on, ESDs. So you have celebrity endorsed. This guy is a higher end. It's a pretty costly one. In one of the communities in Linn County, law enforcement pulled that off a high school kid, and it went for anywhere between $250 and $400. So these are really, really pricey things. They will have some online. If you go online and look, they're bejeweled, and they have jewels, and they're creative, and they're colored, and it's almost like a fashion kind of style kind of statement. This guy is a refillable one, so you just keep refilling the tank. And what's tricky about that, some other substances that can go in there. It doesn't always have to be nicotine. There's other stuff that they refill and put in there. And I'll share what some of those items are. And this guy actually takes the plant material and vaporizes it. So they don't have to put liquids in there. Here they can put actual tobacco, marijuana, synthetic drugs. They can put the actual material into the bowl and then be able to vaporize it. And as you can see, it looks kind of like a cell phone. So it's going to be about that size, a small cell phone. Some others that I thought were pretty alarming were the disguised. Not so much the lighter, because I think, if you came across a kid in a school and he had a lighter, that probably wouldn't be okay either. But what would you do with a kid that had an inhaler? Okay, or what would you do? You see what I'm saying? It gets a little tricky now. Okay, so they are disguised. And this guy's been around for years. So this guy, initially they had the pipe in it. How many have seen this highlighter, okay? So they had a pipe in it. And really it's a little end heavy, but it does highlight. Okay, that's the other thing. Teachers say, well, I'll just pull the cap off and check it. It will highlight, okay? It just doesn't have a lot of highlighter in it, all right? Now what's changed, according to DA, is that pipe has now become a little mini kind of electronic smoking device that's in there, okay? So again, it's going to be end heavy, so if you hold it, it's going to feel heavier on that end than a highlighter, okay? But again, that's out there as well. As far as e-juices, hundreds of flavors, all kinds of flavors. And when you look at some of these, certainly attractive to youth, right? I mean, you have Hawaiian Punch, gummy bears, you got the banana split, and Fruit Loops, and cotton candy, and all this stuff that's out there. And there's just literally hundreds. There's a variety of sites you can get them on, okay? And the other thing that exists with the flavoring is now we're learning that some of the chemicals that go in it, that flavor it, actually causes some lung damage, okay? So that's something as we go along, we're going to learn more health-related stuff, okay? Right now they're so new, we don't have a lot. But that's one thing they learned with the flavoring. I threw some other flavors up here, just kind of give you a sense of what's out there. Skittles, Kool-Aid, Sweet Tarts, Red Bull, again, targeting that energy drink group. So lots, again, lots and lots of flavors. Oh, one more thing I'll say with the juices, and I just read this the other day. They took 100 of the e-juices and they kind of broke them down and figured out, okay, which ones had alcohol in them. 1/3 of them had no alcohol. Okay. Another group of them, and I can't remember the exact number, but it was more than 1/3, all had alcohol in them. So again, that's whatever you have in there plus the alcohol is being changed into a light aerosol and inhale. And they did find that when they tested people and they went through simulations, they did make motor skill mistakes, okay, just from smoking some of the stuff that had alcohol in it. One of the brands, 1 out of the 100, had 25 point whatever percent alcohol. So that's pretty substantial when you're talking, you have nicotine in there and alcohol and they're inhaling it. So there's not going to be that alcohol smell, but they're going to act somewhat intoxicated. So it's just something else to keep in mind.
So these are the things that they put in the e-cigarettes? That's what you're calling the e-juices?
Yes, I'm sorry, yeah. E-juices are the
So
slang
they're sold
term
in
to all
containers?
these.
They're sold in containers like this?
Yep, little containers. And a lot of times people will buy those, especially adults, and they'll leave them in their house because they don't want to get caught without having their refill. And then you get small children get their hands on. And what do they smell? Well, they smell Skittles and, ooh, and start sucking on it, drinking. And so that's one of the reasons why we've seen such a jump in poisonings in regards to children under the age of 6. Been a huge jump. I said that I'd share with you some of the other substances. These are some that are available to go in there. So obviously we know nicotine, and not all of them are nicotine. Some of them may honestly have such a low percentage of nicotine that they count it as nicotine free. But they all have the chemicals in there to make the solution so it can be changed into the vapor or the aerosol. Obviously there's tobacco, alcohol, caffeine. There's a substance now available for caffeine. Marijuana, THC oil, THC concentrates we'll talk more about. Synthetic drugs has their little dropper that's available. Heroin now has a version that's available for these things. And a new synthetic drug called Flocka also has a version that's available to go in these things. So as you can see, wide range of substances. So this thing here, these things here, more so than anything is what scares me. This is what scares me. The youth are into it. They're intrigued by it. If you look online, vaping is one of the top terms online for social media. And all this is available in there and very hard to detect. So you kind of see my concerns.
Where are the e-juices sold? The same places where e-cigarettes are sold?
Yeah, some places will sell both, yeah. Most of the time from what I'm hearing from kids and law enforcement, online purchases, the online verification of age is non-existent or a joke at best, and it's delivered right to the door. So, you know, you could be 15, order it. If you have online purchasing capability, it'll be delivered to your door, and you're good to go.
So how do those work? Do you put some drops of it into the e-cigarette, and then is that the equivalent of a cigarette? Or what?
It depends on the concentration within the e-juice. So you might have nicotine in some e-juices that's higher than in others. Most of the time, it's a bottle is going to be much more than a pack of cigarettes. It's probably going to even be more than a carton. Really depends on the concentration and how much is in that bottle. So, other questions? Okay. We'll move on to marijuana then. Again, I'm not going to spend time talking about just smoking it, and I think we all got that. And has everybody smelled marijuana, burning marijuana before? Okay. If you haven't, sometimes law enforcement can help you with that. Sometimes they will have ways that they can show you, because again, teachers, parents, you want to know what it smells like. So when you smell it, you're like, oh, okay, that's marijuana. Where is it? You go find it. Okay. So sometimes they can help with that. We've seen a real explosion of all these different products, and really these have been building for years, but really started to explode since we've seen more of the retail legalization, and we'll talk a little more about that. And some of them, like Chiba Chews, actually have appeared in Iowa. They make their way back, and one law enforcement officer told me the average coming back from Colorado, the average I guess you call it stash coming back, is about 10 pounds. It's just under 10 pounds of marijuana goods coming back from Colorado into Iowa. So that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of product. One thing I'd like to highlight is THC's going up. If you haven't heard that, this is average THC from 1960 to 2000, looks like 2011 here. Okay, and honestly, it's probably even higher than this now. You're probably looking at about 15%, give or take, for the average. So it's something that's been increasing. And the CBD, which really has a lot of medical opportunity there, potential, that CBD is kept very, very low. Okay, why? Because it actually takes away from the high of the THC. It actually battles the THC in trying to prevent the high. Okay, so it kept that very, very low, even though that's where a lot of the medical potential is in that CBD. 710 is a term, if you follow social media, more and more you're going to see this. The DEA actually released, it was a couple summers ago, that 710 was one of the top terms on social media and was the top term in regards to substance use. Okay? And 710 really, when you flip it upside down, is oil. And that's kind of how it works, see, O-I-L. So when you flip it upside down. And that's kind of what we're going to kind of talk a little bit about here, and that's the dabs, the BHO, the butter, the shatter, the wax, all these things that can take it up to about 90% THC. And I was just told last week by a colleague that it actually can go up to 99% THC now. So there's been this race kind of, particularly between Colorado and California, in regards to who can come up with the better, best dab, so to speak. Some examples of what it might look like. You might have it in an oil form. You might have it in a shatter form where it's kind of like a peanut brittle, kind of. It might be in a waxy kind of or butter form. And some of these actually will be used in the ESDs. So instead of smoking a joint that might have 15% THC, they can put this stuff in it and it'll be 90% THC in the ESDs. So it's kind of scary because you're talking about that basically one hit off a ESD with this stuff could be equivalent to a joint or a little less than a joint. So it's pretty potent. I've heard things of it being put in a capsule. So I don't know that I've heard that locally, but just something to keep on your radar that it can be in different forms. And as you can see, the capsule will look like fish oil or look like omega-3, vitamin E, that kind of thing. The bubble will move more in it though. So if you find one and you move it around, that bubble's going to shift around in that capsule. One more thing I'll mention on THC extraction, you might notice if somebody's making it, you'll notice tubes. They might be glass, plastic, metal. They might have an end on them that has holes in it, or it has a screen on it and a filter. And what they do is use butane to force into that to kind of push out, draw out the THC in order to make it into one of those other substances, highly concentrated. Okay, so you're going to notice gizmo like that. You might notice butane tanks around the house or in a basement, in the garbage. It's going to be lots of butane tanks that you're going to notice. Some other things that are out there, some snacks. We've all made jokes about the brownies, right? Okay, it's gotten way beyond that. So as you see here, you got Pop-Tarts and you got stoner snacks and there's cupcakes and all kinds of stuff. This one here is fruity treat, and that to me looked like Fruity Pebbles, quite honestly. This guy up here, even the chocolate cupcake, they even had to go so far as to put the squiggly on the top. Okay, kind of over the top, not necessary. Got the chocolate cupcake that's a THC product, and we're going to add the squiggly to the top. So just again, very, very confusing. There's a variety of different candies out there. Some of them are kind of like, I don't know if they're novelty candies but they're very confusing. At first glance, you're like, oh wow, oh no, that's not Kit Kat, that's Keef Kat. And oh, that's not Oreos, that's Double Puff Oreo. Okay, so at first glance, you might not notice it. Okay, this is some of the stuff that's coming back, and actually, Chiba Chews is one of the more popular candies that are out there as far as THC candies. The gummy bears, DEA, I'm going to refer to them again. They released information again a couple of years ago, said that if THC concentrates were used to go into the gummy bears, then by grabbing the ear and pulling off most of the head and eating that could be equal to 1 joint, just that part. Now, I don't know about you all. I mean, how do you eat gummy bears? Somebody gives you a bag of gummy bears, you just start popping them, right? Okay? And unfortunately, that's what people do as well when they get these things, is they just start popping them and not considering the level of THC that's in a lot of these products. As far as the little girl in Colorado took a plate of cookies to school, okay? They look like cookies. Even the little girl says she didn't know, okay? They were THC cookies. She took them to school, shared them with her friends, and that just wasn't a good thing, okay? Had kids going to the emergency room. So it gets very confusing, and that's part of the problem right now.
Where do people get this stuff? Like, this is online?
Law enforcement's told me that people do order stuff online and they try to have it shipped in, and they'll catch some of it. But this is the kind of stuff also being brought back from Colorado. So people come back with, for instance, Chiba Chews. If I remember right, the law enforcement had told me that it was a couple cases of Chiba Chews. So you're talking a lot of product. Questions? Other questions? Okay. There's the drinks out there. So right now, I mean, it'd be hard for you not to be able to tell this stuff is a THC product. Got the big marijuana leaf on it, or it says cocaine up the side of it. But some of these others, the elixirs, they're starting to look different now. So you're starting to see some of these changing and going to something that's a little harder to detect. So it's something also kind of keep a close eye. As far as paraphernalia goes, we talked about the highlighter. I just kind of keep your eyes out. If you have a teenager and that teenager has a can of pop sitting in their room for anything more than a day, take a closer look at it. I have 2 teenagers. If I give them a can of pop, I go up there an hour, it's gone. Okay. So if it's sitting around, take a closer look at it. The top or bottoms can unscrew, and there's compartments in there they can hide drugs. This is an example of something that's being sold in Cedar Rapids. This is being sold as a tobacco pipe. Okay, it's being sold as a tobacco product because they can't sell drug paraphernalia. It's a tobacco product, and by law, technically, this wouldn't become a drug product until when? What would have to exist? Drugs, right? There has to be residue or something in it before it becomes a drug product. So until then, they can sell it as tobacco. Now, I had a grandfather smoked a pipe. That's not the pipe he smoked. Okay, as far as a tobacco pipe, that's not it. But this is kind of another way that some of these businesses will promote some of this stuff. Now, this one baffles me. This is also being sold as a tobacco product. This is actually called a dabber. And what happens is in this little container, they'll have their THC concentrate. And this little needle will be used to kind of scrape out some of that and put it in a pipe or put it into an ESD, and then they can be able to smoke it then. Okay, this is called a dabber. I cannot, somebody please help me, I cannot figure out a use for tobacco, not a single one, for this guy. You might be able to convince me that you can stick tobacco in in this guy, but this has no use, but it is being sold as a tobacco product. These were sold in Lindale Mall. So there was a kiosk there in Lindale Mall. And if you look closely, at first glance, yeah, that might be Adidas. But you look closely, you got the Addicted, you got marijuana leaves instead of the Adidas sign, you have the mouth with licking their joint, and you have all that going on. Sold right in Lindale Mall. This one also sold in Lindale Mall, just hit it instead of just do it. And in the swish, you have 420 in there, and you got a pipe, and you got a marijuana leaf, and you got kind of different things hidden in there. So examples, again, of other ways that this is promoted, perception of harm is lowered. And then these guys, this guy is designed, it's called the Knockout Bomb. It's designed to go on any beer bottle. And somebody can have their joint, or their marijuana and their beer at the same time. So they can drink their beer and they can flip it around, they can take a puff off the marijuana if they want. This guy is an ESD that actually allows for 2 different drugs, chemicals to be put in there, and then they can vaporize them or make them into an aerosol and blend them together for the inhalation piece of it. That's called haze. Questions on any of this? So you're kind of seeing it's not just going to stop, it just keeps going. And that's what we got to kind of watch for. Any, up to this point, marijuana questions? We're good? Just want to be sure. Okay. You guys look at me. I don't make this stuff up. I'm just reporting what's out there.
If
Yeah.
how do states legalize this if marijuana is such a drug? I mean, like Colorado, is there have to be a certain percentage of THC in their products before they can sell it?
They're working on that, but they haven't had anything in place up to this point. Okay? It's been kind of the Wild West in Colorado when it comes to marijuana products, legalization.